Suppository, welcome. Let me just check that you're all lit up. And no, this is always a tricky one. There we go. All right, let me pull this forward.
Right, thanks a bunch. Morning, it's really, really good to be here. I love it when we can just really enjoy God like that, and just that constant sense where time just disappears, you're in one big now, and you just sense the life. I've been here a couple of times, so it's really good to be back here, and thank you, Sean, for your hospitality. You've looked after me well, you've worked me well, and we've had a great time. It's been a real blessing being with your lot and with the guys yesterday morning, and then the region, and then of course your leaders last night. Really, really enjoyed it. Some of you probably know I've really got to know Sean back about 07, 08, 09, somewhere around there when I come to interview him about pastoring for my thesis. So since then we've been good friends and sort of tracked each other, how we're doing in our communities. If you don't know, I come from a small town called Tikawiti, Colin Meads country. So there you go. And Jim Bolger country, and who else is down that way? It's got the big shearing statue, and it's got the Colin Meads statue and all of the above. But it's just a great little community. The funny thing is, I actually grew up in a little town called Pew Pew, which is south of that on the main road through to New Plymouth, if you know State Highway 3. And I loved growing up on a farm. It was one big playground. I never got the farming bug. My dad was a shepherd. My older brother ended up becoming a stock agent and has got his company selling all sorts of stuff. I never got it. For me, farm life was just one big playground. Playing cowboys and Indians, if you can say that these days, and World War II, fighting Germans and Japanese. Sorry if you're German and Japanese here, but that's the way it was. It was just great stuff, eeling and caving. I just was so thankful to where I grew up, and I remember thinking of Tikawiti as a place, oh gosh, would never like to live there. And you know how life is, and behold, here I am. I'm there, and I have my family largely there. I have 5 children. My wife is a super hard worker. She's one that if you met her and you happen to say something that, oh, I've got such a big job and it's so hard, I know that when she hears that, that translates into a trailer and all that. She'll be at your house before you know it, just doing stuff. I've got 3 of my 5 children are married, and the good news is they live in my town, and so I have 10 grandchildren, all of them there. And the cool thing is with grandchildren, you are the rock star. They love you. I think I'm waiting to see when they hit teenage years whether we are out of date or whatever, or we become their sanctuary because they're falling out with their parents and we're their escape place. Don't know, that's all ahead, but absolutely love having them there. My younger 2, one's in Queenstown, and my baby girl, she's 23. She was in the military, but now she is a professional firefighter in Palmerston North. So good on you for the baking. Do that, and bless them, because they really do have a job that does put them in a lot of danger, and they also see a lot of horrible stuff, which is not very nice. So they do, any encouragement you can bless them with is really great. But anyway, what I want to share with you today, I think is a really one of those messages that I think will help us, because there are different times in our life where we either drift from God, we're walking with Him, or we want to really go hard after Him, or whatever it is. But what I want to share today will help with the rhythm of that, will help with how we can allow Him to make Himself known. I'm sure Sean has done a fantastic job communicating that you're a part of a movement called the Assemblies of God. It's the biggest Pentecostal movement in the world. It has 60 million people. They've got a big project over the next 10 years to see if they can double their footprint. And that's particularly successful in Africa and Asia and South America at the moment. So that's a big thing. So within New Zealand, we're really trying to help churches really, I guess we use the phrase, find the ancient ways, how we can be church in the way that the early church was. And it's a slow process, but we're kind of working towards that. And so it's been a lot of fun doing that. But I think I went, as the role I have, I got to go to Istanbul. They had a gathering of a whole lot of leaders from their movements around the country, around the world were there. And there's a real sense amongst them all, regardless whether they had huge in New Zealand, the Assemblies of God's not massive. I think it's about 25,000 people would be attending AG churches, maybe a bit more, give or take. But some of these countries had millions. But one of the things that stood out was the sense of it's our time right now. And you're seeing a lot of people take initiatives. Like I love what's happening with that tent crusade. You know, the heart that you guys carry to go to your community and make a difference. Because there are a lot of people out there that have a God awareness but don't know Him. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I knew God was over there, and you had to go in that naughty dark box to say stuff and make up stuff and confess. And so I would conjure up. I wouldn't spill all the beans. I'd say enough. So I'd say, I threw stones and maybe said some swear words or something like that. It would be as deep as I got. But I knew He was always there, but it wasn't until He came alive to me when I was in the military myself and had just left the army, and that's where God made Himself known, and suddenly the song Amazing Grace made sense. We sang it every Sunday when it was nearly knock-off time. We'd get to, I was lost and now I'm found. I couldn't work out what does that even mean. I was lost and now I'm found. It wasn't until I realized, when I got found, that I realized I was lost. It wasn't until I could see that I realized I was actually blind. And so God has been very gracious. I've loved my walk with Him. It's had all sorts of color in it. And I just want to do the best I can to walk with Him. And one of the things I want to walk through is a very well-known passage for those that are familiar with the Bible, about how we walk with Him. When we chase after God, we can have two ways of looking at how God will use us. One is that we pray a lot, and prayer is so important. But if all we do is pray, it ends up deceiving us, because true prayer will always lead to a response from ourselves. We're praying with the intent, Lord, as I pray this, show me if I'm meant to be a part of the answer. So that's one of the things. The other danger is we just go off and try and do it ourselves. As Sean said, we try and fix everybody and do all the things, and it kind of doesn't work if it's us doing it. We talked about this morning, but one of the things I find quite funny is I could be chipping away at something with my congregation for several years. Someone will come in and say the same thing, and after the service, everyone goes, "Oh, that was amazing. That was so cool." And I'm thinking, I've been saying that for a long time. But anyway, I want to share this fairly well-known passage. It comes from Matthew 11, verses 28 through to 30. And it's Jesus speaking. I'll give you the context in a moment, but I'll just read the verse. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Now, again, I grew up at a distance. I wasn't a good Catholic. I probably did all the stuff that they were expected to do, which is rugby, racing, and beer, all of those things. But I was always aware He was far off, and you always had this sense of carrying a load. You're just carrying stuff. And as believers, we can do the same. We're always carrying a thing. So something's not quite right there. But before I start to unpack what that verse is about, I just want to set a bit of a context. Because when Jesus spoke this, He was speaking to an audience of the day. And what He said was incredible news indeed, because the environment they lived in was the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were kind of the predominant religious order. If you wanted to know God or find out about God or anything, they were the gatekeepers, so to speak. They were the ones that you had to go through and follow their rules and teachings and so on and so forth, be connected with, and that was the way you could find God. But the problem was that they were very zealous in teaching the law, the commandments, but they added their own policy and procedures as well. And they were hugely demanding. If you've ever been in a church that's gone quite exclusive or extreme, you'll find that same sort of thing, where to belong, it's not enough just to adhere to what the Word teaches. There's these bonus bits that you have to hold on to. And that's the world that Jesus was speaking into. And those were those who were listening to Him who heard that. So here's some of the stuff. Here's just a few things that they cooked up. One of them was they were obsessed with how you washed your hands. Okay, for them it was a big deal. And to me, I'm thinking, what? But for them, they don't wash their hands in the tradition of the elders. There must have been a special way, maybe 3 times, 4 times, 2 times, who knows. But it was a real big deal. If you didn't do it, no, you can't be one of us. So just really, really silly things. They had special times to pray. And so everyone knew that you were praying. In fact, they were so good at their prayer that they would actually stand. So it'd be like you going downtown in Kerikeri and finding a nice prominent place, and then you launch into prayer. Look at me, I'm praying. I'm a great Christian. I'm praying out loud. And they did all that. And when they fasted, they deliberately disfigured themselves. They even said, oh, look at Brother so-and-so's fasting. So they had all these little traditions that you had to do. Probably one of the worst things that they lived in was they had this code of who was impure and unclean, and basically who could never get to Christ. If you're on that list of impure and unclean, so if you're someone that's had a shady lifestyle, if you've done some things that you perhaps ought not have done, well, you are permanently on the outer. It was not possible for you to get to God because these gatekeepers would keep you out. They even had rules around food, what you could eat, what was classed as kosher. I don't know where KFC, McDonald's would have figured in their day, but they had food that you couldn't, or you can't touch that. Like, well, obviously pork was somewhere in there, and which is, those who like sweet and sour pork, that's a bit tough. But all of these things that are going on, you couldn't do. They had this incredible sense of rules. They even went so far that if they had received anything, they tithed. They spoke about giving here this morning, but they tithed everything, so even down to herbs. So let's just say someone came to you and gave you 6 scones. Well, under their mentality, okay, I need to give 10% to God. So 6, 1 and how much? 1.34 scones. Okay, there are Sean or the church or whatever. Here's your 1.3 scone. Whatever. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but when you start going down this road of legalism and rules, it gets just absolutely silly. To prove that they were great believers, they wore their scriptures on tassels and hats, and they were flowing off them, and they looked like a walking billboard. Today we have tattoos. I love Jesus, and he's my best friend, all that kind of stuff. But then they had all of that. So all these bonus things that they did. One of the things, I was fortunate enough back in 2018 to be on a trip that went to Israel, and a big deal for them is the Sabbath. You don't work on the Sabbath, which is for the Saturday for those that don't know it. Now, the Sabbath was God's idea for people to have a rest, but not to be silly about it. They were so extreme. So in Israel, we happened to stay by the Dead Sea at the Hotel Hod or some name like that. We're on about the 12th floor. And on the Saturday, they had an elevator that was kosher. And you can't press the button. So when the elevator literally goes up and down all day, because to push a button is work. So if you were on the 12th floor and you wanted to go down the ground floor, you hopped on it. Here we go, 12th floor. We're stopping at the 11th floor. No one hopping on, no one hopping off. 10th floor, oh gosh. And if you get down the bottom and think, I left my wallet in the room. Well, that sucks. Up we go again. That shows, and that's today. Obviously, they didn't have elevators back then, but that's today what they do and did, and it's really bizarre. It's just this craziness. And in fact, what was kind of a bit naughty was some of the ones that were all in with the law were cunning. They would book in at a really nice hotel, and they wouldn't check out because it was work to check out. So the hotel couldn't do anything about it. So you know how you got to check out at 10 a.m.? Well, they'd be able to stay until, I think the Sabbath finished at 6 p.m. or something like that, 5 or 6. And so therefore, cool, I'm staying at a really nice hotel, but you can't know that's work for me to carry my bags down there. I'm staying, I'm resting. And then so they had these bonus late checkouts. So it was really bizarre. So it was quite exhausting. The weird thing is, though, they were very loose when it came to marriage. Now, Deuteronomy 24 says the conditions for giving a divorce. The Pharisees loved this one, so they lived in a space with all these rules that if they tired of their wife, and primarily his wife, not the other way around, it was the man could write a certificate of divorce. I want an upgrade. Not happy about this. Burnt the toast. That's 4 weeks in a row now. We've had burnt toast and not liking this and that, and now I want to upgrade. Write a certificate and off they go. So it was just a crazy, crazy world. Jesus called them blind guides. I mean, this is not encouraging when someone says, there's an amazing preacher moving through around Jerusalem and in Israel. It's all cool. Let's hear him. And he addresses you as a brood of snakes and vipers, blind guides, whitewashed tombs. You're all shiny and clean on the outside, but you're full of dead men's bones. And that's what legalism does. You have the appearance of being so holy and devoted to God, but really, you're just a very angry person on the inside. You're waiting to pounce. You're waiting to pull someone up. And so I'm just giving you all of that to say that's the context. When he says, come to me, all of you that labor and are heavy burdened. Jesus even went so far as to say that you lay burdens on them that you yourselves can't even carry. And in fact, it was even worse. He said, you make them twice as much a son of hell as you are. Hardly inspiring if you are a Pharisee. So it's pretty intense what he had to say. So bearing that in mind, imagine you're now someone that's always been on the outer and you hear this strange man who seems to have this vibrancy in life speak these words. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So the Pharisees, their teaching was classed as wearying and burdensome. And so I want to just run through a few questions to put to you as to what we could do, because this is why the gospel is the good news. Now, we may not necessarily live in an environment where the church's options you've got have all these barriers of codes of behavior and policy procedures that could be a barrier, but there'll be society ones that will be that through us. Sometimes what we have to run the gauntlet in is either the temptations and the stuff that traps us. Maybe it's a drinking addiction, maybe it's stuff on the internet, maybe it's a whole host of things that you're wrestling with and you feel, I've just lost my peace. It's funny, I still recall as again, I had no idea what this even meant, but I was probably in Form 1 or 2, and I remember walking across the field at the college where I was at school and prayed this weird prayer. I knew God was far away, but kind of a prayer something like this: if only there was a way to start again. If only, now, I'm not getting at Catholics, by the way, but I don't recall any teaching that said, with God, you can start again. All I knew was I had to go into the booth and say stuff and then do X many, and then off I went. But in my heart, I had this weight of failure, this weight of if only, and thinking, if only there's a way. I didn't realize, but that was a call about the whole idea of being born again, of starting again. I didn't know that at the time. But sometimes the things we face is we've got a flawed teaching and understanding of who Jesus is and what he's asking of us. And I'm going to get into that just in a moment. But I want to put to you some questions, because firstly, I just want to sit this with you as you hear these questions. Jesus promised us that his yoke was easy. Now, I don't think I've met many Christians, when I say, how's it going, that they give any answer other than, I'm busy, I'm really busy, or you have no idea how busy I am. And it's all variations. I've just got no time, I'm rushing from here to there, always rushing. And the sense of saying, do you think walking with Jesus, is it easy? Ooh, sometimes, but lots of times that's really tough. And do you feel you're carrying a load that is light, your spirit and heart is just, choice, just loving today? Or is it kind of a little bit of stoop going on? There's a pressure, you can't explain it, it's just there. Because as I said to the guys yesterday, either Jesus was lying to us or he was telling the truth and we've got it wrong. So I believe he was telling the truth when he said walking with him is easy. And that he says, the burden I give you is actually light. It's light. And so if it's not that, then there's something that we need to be doing to put ourselves in a place of that. So here's some questions just to get you thinking, because I want you to understand this is not a case of you're in or you're out. This is not about that. This is about leaning into him to help us. Okay? So this is not, by the end of the day, you'll be free and off you go. I mean, God could do that. But in most cases, it's a walking out. It's a walking out. So here's some questions I want you to think about. Do we feel that we're kind of never good enough? You've got this pressure, this voice, this thinking, I'm not good enough. And you're kind of walking along like a wounded soldier a little bit. You're carrying this, I'm just not good enough. And the danger of that is we end up making decisions to either undermine someone else or to make us look better than we are. We try extra hard when we don't need to. All of these things. And so a yoke we've got is kind of we're really pulling a thing. And it's really unhelpful. So do we find that we're not good enough? And a good way to help test where you sit with that is, like you, I mess up. One of the things, when I became a believer, I didn't need a whole bunch of have you done, because if you have, you can't get in. I didn't need any of that. I had no issue with, are you a sinner? Absolutely. Have you done, don't even worry about your shopping list. Whatever you're going to say, I probably did it or thought it. So yeah, all of that. I didn't need that. I needed someone who could make me clean. Someone who could say, come, home time for you. You're with me now. And that's the space. And when you mess up, is there an ease from moving from what we've done wrong, or we may have said something, done something, or whatever, and we just, oh my gosh, I shouldn't, we acknowledge it, and then very quickly we move into freedom, into a lightness of spirit. If that's not there, and there's this whole going on, this grind, then maybe we're not quite in that easy space that he's speaking of. Do we feel we should always be doing more? You've never done enough. Like, for example, if someone said, we need to read the word more, need to read the word. Yeah, we'd all have to say, yes, we do. We need to share our faith. We need to be sharing our faith. We need to share. Yes, we do. We need to pray more. We need to pray more. Yes, we do. We need to give all of our money away. We need to give. Yes, we do. And there's always that sense that it's a target that keeps going further away. If you feel that, then that's not the easy one he spoke of. That's not where it's at. Something's out of alignment if we're in that space of there's always more. Here's a big one, do we really take in the moment with God? And my darling wife, she is wonderful, but we're working on this one because she's such a helper. The downside to someone who's a helper is they're always somewhere else. What I mean by that, you can be having a great time and the middle of it will be, I need to go and see so-and-so. I promised I'd go, and I think, just relax. Take a moment. Draw some breath. But if you always feel like you need to be doing more, does that sound easy or hard? It sounds like you're at the night trots and the driver's really cracking the whip. It's the home stretch and you're really going for it. And it's not that sense of just that. You know, we're not taking in that moment. There's really difficult to be still. Really difficult. Is his call an overwhelming burden? Well, God is asking of you. Does it kind of make you thinking, it's a bit like you've decided to go to the gym in the morning. And you started off and it was summer, it was okay then. Now it's winter and it's 6 a.m. and the alarm's gone off and it's freezing or cold. Or probably didn't get that up here, but it's cold and you have to say, Shale or Shanta, oh, this is tough. This is tough. This is tough. And it's a burden. Whatever he asks us, it's always a burden. You kind of ask them and you see them go, oh, like that. That's the response. Oh. That's one of the things I've learned as a minister. Never. So, like, for example, when we have our prayer meeting, I don't really care who's there. I mean that. Now, I mean, when I say I don't care, I'm not grieved. I don't want anyone to come who's there because they go, oh, I have to be here. I said, no, you don't. It's just here. If you're here, you're here. Great. If not, so is it an overwhelming burden? Is walking with Jesus complicated and difficult? Because again, he made the statement, it's easy. Is it complicated and difficult? And if the answer to that is yes, then again, it's not him that's out of alignment, it's us. Because this is a tremendous promise for us. It really is. Is it easier for us just to sit back and to do little? We're kind of so overwhelmed that, you know, a bit like the one talent person. Oh my gosh, I just don't know anymore. I'm just going to sit down here under the cool of our tree and just stay right here. I'm not going to move. I'm staying still. That's it for me. Because you just think getting up is, oh my gosh. I know as we age, standing up is a big effort. And I said this other day, getting shoes, it's really annoying. I even watched my friend do it, and I'm thinking, that's what I do. He picked up a piece of paper or a stick. Instead of using that, he went like that. Because there's just a little bit, you only have to go a little bit lower. Don't have to go so far pinching like that. Like crab's claws, instead of picking it like that. Oh my gosh, I think, oh, these muscles are tightening up. It's terrible. But it's that we just want to sit back. And do we carry shame or guilt that we just can't shake? Because he again said, the burden is light. So he's not lying, he's telling the truth. So something is wrong if we are carrying shame and guilt. And it's a really big thing that we can do that. And is there like a constant sense of us being endlessly busy? There's always so little time, of what needs to be done. We're always rushing in life. And one of the funny things is, I find, is when people hear this, they cut off the one person they shouldn't. They say, oh no, I want to take some time out for me. And they'll cut off all the people that can help them journey. And they'll pull back. And I'm thinking, it's the wrong way again. We're going to be with him, walk with him. I've said we're always somewhere else. Do we get angry or frustrated quickly? Because that's a sign of the Pharisees. They were ready to pounce. But are we just almost like a simmering volcano with all this pressure of what society expects? We've seen a big shift without offering my thoughts about the elections, but the pressure with the US elections was the possibility of going way off out to the left and doing some crazy stuff too. Who knows where we're going to land now? But that whole pressure of what society expects and how you're supposed to behave and how you should carry yourself and think. All of that pressure that's on us. What does that make us angry? And are we regularly stressed? And so if any of those are yes, I'd be very surprised if you didn't get at least 2 or 3 there. But if yes to any of those, then I think there's good news today. That Jesus wants to communicate and to make himself known to us. Because one of the opening things he says, come to me, and he says these words, gosh, what a tonic for Western world right now. I will give you rest. Imagine a body of believers that live passionate for Jesus, but are at rest with him. There's an ease in ourselves. So even when we do a thing and it didn't quite turn out right, and we kind of messed it up, we shouldn't see that, we said that, we did this and did that, but we're okay with all of that. I'm at rest. What a place to be in. Even parenting, as a spouse, as a grandparent, as a whatever role you might have in your community, whatever. There's an ease there. He says, I will give you rest. And one of the things I really love about this, he of all the words he could have chosen to describe God, he says, I am gentle at heart. I mean, that's not the view of God I grew up with. He was ready to pounce. He was really ticked off with me, and the sooner I got in that booth, the better. But it was all of that. But somehow deep down, I knew he wasn't like that. I remember before becoming a believer, I was about 22, 23. I remember reading parts of the Word and thinking, how come people that were seen as outcasts didn't care what they had to do to get to him, to touch him, to be in his presence? What did he project that meant, I don't care if I'm shamed in front of 1,000 people. I don't care as long as I can touch him. And he says, I am gentle at heart. When you think of the power God holds, one of the guys said, Donald Trump's got all his power. Forget about what he holds. God holds infinite power. The power to create something just by his word. The power to make a thing cease to be at the power of his word. He has that kind of power. Phenomenal power. And yet he says, I'm gentle at heart. That is quite the difference sermon that the Pharisees were speaking. It was this very severe God that you had to really be on your best behavior if you're going to get any sort of gain. So he is saying, I'm gentle at heart. And then he says, I am humble. And that is incredible. It's really hard to come up with a metaphor that kind of fits the vastness and the enormity and the greatness of God. But that will be like if you've ever sat next to someone super, super famous and they talk to you like you're a normal person, not like they're aloof and distant. That's kind of, sort of in the zone. This person's not really famous per se, kind of famous for being married to someone famous, but I flew back from Fiji and I ended up sitting next to Sally Ridge, married to Matthew Ridge. That was her fame, was being married to Matthew Ridge, the All Black and the league player. But she was just a very down-to-earth, normal, and we talked about all sorts of stuff. We talked about what I was doing in Fiji, my job, all that kind of stuff, and she said about what all her boys are doing and so on and so forth. But when you were someone really famous, and I mean going much, much, much higher, I played golf with Richard Hadley. That was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that. And I talked about my experience of bowling for Kiwi College old boys, and he told me about him playing for New Zealand. Bit of a gap, but that's okay. But there is something special when they relate to you as you count. And so here is where Revelation says that when God is revealed and the Lamb, it says that the elders cast down their crowns. They fall down before him in worship and say, "Worthy, worthy, worthy are you, Lord, and glory to the Lamb." So that majesty of worship, and yet he comes to you. So he can come and just begin to speak to you because you have value as a person made in his image. That is the humbleness that's the God we serve, that he knows us. And that's why the word says we don't have a high priest who wasn't tempted and everything like we were, but obviously was without sin. So he knows. Except he had the firepower, a better firepower within him to deal with it than we have. So that's the way he introduced himself, that he's gentle and he's humble. And I just think that's an incredible thing. But this is what I want you to understand. It's a journey. It's walking with him. As we take his easy yoke, he says, learn from me. So learn. So begin to learn. Okay, I can see you're really wound up about that. Just lean into me, and I will just start walking with me. And let's get that alignment. I was thinking what would be a really cool way to sort of show this would be maybe get husbands and wives to stand side by side and then tie their left and right feet together and get them to have a race around here, see who falls over. And obviously, if you're in step, you're going to win because you're going to be going well. It's kind of like that. It's learn from him. So here's some questions from the flip side to encourage you how we can walk out into this place of easy and light. When we mess up, okay, this is for those who are learning to lean into him. When we mess up, do we feel confident that God will redeem it? So we've done something dumb, but in our hearts, we think God's still going to fix this. And what's the answer to that question? Increasingly, yes. We're seeing a side of God that he's not angry, not going to cast us off, not going to put us in the naughty chair. Off we go, but he very quickly brings us to himself, and we begin to learn that. So we learn as we mess up that he's going to lead us out and back into that in step with him again. He'll do that. We feel complete in him. Increasingly, yes. And there's a beautiful thing about walking with God that even in our flaws, we know that we are greatly loved. One of the things I often tease, and I said this at the conference a few weeks back, is I know, and I say this thinking you should be saying the same thing, I'm his favorite. He really, really loves me. Even when I mess up, my wife gets so annoyed, I said, oh, he just loves me so much. And she goes, like that. But he really does. And that's the space. John wrote about it. I'm the disciple whom Jesus loved. And that's the relationship he wants you to lean into. He is like that for you. So you think, oh, I don't feel complete. Well, just lean in and say, Lord, thank you that in you, you're more than enough. You're enough. And lean into that. Allow him to bring that alignment, that easiness of walk back into your life. We're able to stay in the moment. And increasingly, that is yes. Some of the best times with God has just been a whole bunch of crazy stuff's going on. I said, Lord, I'm just going to pause here. And in that pause, I just feel this rising peace, which I can't explain. Just begins to, thank you, God. And I know a couple of times we've had, oh, this has happened, this, but not quite as bad as Job, but a whole lot of bad stuff happening. And then you realize this is overwhelming. And so it just felt to say, it's going to be okay. What's happening? Well, I'm just staying in the moment. God's got this. He's going to do this. And so we lean into, I'm not saying I've got there, but I'm leaning into it, and it's getting a bit easier. We feel a burning desire to do right by Him in all circumstances. So our inner compass is becoming more aligned to walk as He would. It's not always a case of what you need to do, it's how we do it. Oh, I just need to tell them, yeah, but how did you do it? 1 out of 10 for how. Didn't quite get that one right. But we lean into Him. There's a real sense of that sense of, I want to do right by Him, and you're leaning into Him for that. And so when difficulty comes and when you're not quite sure, you just lean into Him. Lord, I'm just resting in this space, looking to You. And suddenly this desire begins to rise up. Suddenly an idea of what our next step is begins to come as we lean into Him. Because God is asking us more to really walk with Him and see the wonderful places He's going to do that. And which leads on to the next one. We sense a partnership with Him as we go out each day. We realize each day is the gift from God, and we're walking with Him. We are His hands and feet to a world that doesn't yet know Him. We're a demonstration of what goodness and endurance and mercy and hope and joy and all of these things looks like as we lean into Him. Before I became a minister, I left the military and I had a job for a number of years. I finished up being a grocery manager and had this dungy bike. I used to ride to the supermarket each morning, and it was only a couple of k's away where I live. And I would ride to work, and always the same prayer: Lord, here we go, we're in. Game on, batter up. This is going to be fun. What's going to happen today? So it's that leaning into Him, that you don't have, there's your church life, there's your home group life, and here's that. It's all one and the same. We don't partially walk with God, we walk with Him. We have that sense that life, and I've just said this, it's inseparable for Him. The answer to that is yes. Whether we're watching a movie, reading a book, going for a walk, gazing off into the sunset, we're doing a very complex job, or we're in a really difficult, tight spot, even trying to navigate a conflict or whatever, or change, we're still doing it in Him. The answer is yes, because we're leaning into Him. We're not there yet, but each day it's getting easier because He's the one we're leaning into. And the beautiful thing is, we see on that far distant horizon is that there's more and more of Christ to come. If this is how good it is now, what does the future hold? And death loses its sting. Without being all dark, I can understand a little bit of what Paul said when he goes, I long to be with Jesus and in His presence. That's what I want. That's my desire. But it's better for you that I stay to help you, but really, I want to be with Him. And so there's this rising leaning into, Lord, I love Your presence. I love Your life. I love just that sense of acceptance for who I am and how You're opening up opportunities and giving me ability to do things that I just never dreamed possible. And He just wanted to be in that space. And so we begin to grow into the sense of ease daily as we just walk with Him. And the answer is yes. It's an increasing yes as we lean into Him. Because He was speaking the truth when He said it's easy. And He wasn't lying. He was speaking the truth when He says His burden for us is light. Hebrews 4:9-11 talks about a whole bunch of stuff about the rest of God. And then it goes on to say in verse 11, let us therefore make every effort to enter into that rest. It's kind of a bit of a contradiction, make every effort to enter rest. I'm rushing to find rest. But what it's simply saying is, in all of our desire to serve and walk with God, we need to keep leaning into, Lord, I want to come from that place of rest. I don't want to be striving. I don't want to do it to prove myself or to do any of that stuff. I want to do it because it's You and me, Christ alive in me, living through me. So we can be the most passionate people, but it's still done out of ease. And I was talking to Ed about this yesterday, this whole sense of you're so passionate for God, but it's still with a lightness of spirit and heart. That's the place. Because it's like, you may have friends, you might be the one, when they come around, they want to have fellowship, and you're exhausted when they've gone. They've shared their latest insights into God, and it's so heavy, you feel the life being, you're just draining of color by the time they're finishing. Oh my goodness. That's not what I'm talking about. It's people feel energized by what you're saying. So I think this is such a beautiful thing. And to really close up that gap, 1 Peter 5b and 7 talks about just humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. If you think, he said a whole bunch of stuff and I'm way out there, just say, Lord, that's me, but I give it to you. And it says he cares for us, and he'll take that from us. And as we lean into him. So, final verse I want to leave with you is Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2. It talks about this great cloud of witnesses. It's our time now. Throughout history, different people have carried the baton of the relationship with Christ. Now it's our time. We're surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses in the life of faith. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. So it really is, what are we carrying? What extra loads are we carrying? What are we yoked to? Oh, I better please. I don't want to offend so-and-so. I don't want to upset them. What are all these yokes that are making us pull against God, that are holding us from moving to that place of ease? One of the things I had to wrestle with, I played rugby, senior rugby, and when God got a hold of me and I gave him my life, but prior to becoming a believer, I had to wrestle with this. What will the rugby people think of me? What are they going to think of me? Because I was in their top three, the big drinkers, the one that would go to the longest, up early with another crate, and off we would go again. All of that. What are they going to think? He's gone from that to zero. How's that? What are they going to do? I remember talking to, and this person wasn't even a believer. Because when you don't know Christ yet, you talk to anybody. And we're driving to work, and he said, his profound wisdom, who cares what they think? You do what's right by you. What a cool answer. And we still do that today. We're worried about what others think, and that becomes a yoke of stopping us from going the way of ease. And it's what the family thinks. It's what will upset so-and-so. Oh, we've got to be careful with. Oh, we don't. And we've got to really lean into God and say, Lord, help me to navigate that so I can walk freely with you. Help me not to carry these unnecessary burdens and stuff. And even if you're struggling with addictions or stuff like that, we can lean into God and say, Lord, just help me. Show me a way of escape. Give me some flags that when I'm starting to tip over, I can pick it up really early and take those steps. So what is that? So if we can do that, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So just to close, what he lays on us, it isn't heavy. It's light. And who hasn't had a time where you've just really made your heart right with God? What is the feeling? A couple of things. Normally you feel clean. And also you have this lightness. You're thinking, whew, oh, and a big smile. What's going on? Whew. I don't know. I can't explain it. I just feel, I could probably get sprint around the building now. I feel I've been unchained, sort of thing. And there's a beautiful place. Paul writes about, I labor more than everyone. So he never lost his passion. He really worked hard. But he did it with ease because he said, yet not I, but the grace of God in me. He was able to pour himself out more than anybody else. And yet it was in the ease of the Holy Spirit. So walking in ease doesn't mean you're lazy or you switch off. It just means where we're drawing our strength from. It's coming from God now, not us. And it's the freedom of we are accepted in him. So I hope this message has encouraged you, because it's not a case of you can sort it today. It's a case of learn from me. Learn from me. Submit whatever it is that's binding you up. Lean into him. Lord, I just trust you to walk me out into this place. So, because I remember years ago wrestling with this question, how come Jesus said the life that I have is life abundant and even more abundant than basically anything you can ever have? So again, is he tricking or not? He's saying the life he has is far better than anything the world has to offer. So is that for real or not? I think the answer is absolutely 100%. So lean into him. Amen. I just want to pray for you, and I'll hand back to Brother Sean, and whatever he wants to do, he can do. Lord, I thank you. Thank you for your word. I thank you that we serve a God who is gentle, who is very careful, much like a powerful, strong person who's just picking up a toddler and just carrying them, and that you are gentle with us. You're not harsh. You haven't got that angry eye waiting to pounce, but you're gentle and you relate to us in our humanity. So I pray wherever we find ourselves, that we'll be able to lean into you, that we can commit our ways to you, that we can trust you, that even when we have this burst of energy and passion to serve you, it's still going to come out of that ease of the Holy Spirit, that lightness of spirit. And I pray, God, that there be such a revelation of the blood of the Lamb, that through the forgiveness of Christ, that who the Son sets free is free indeed. We love you, Jesus. What a joy to walk with you. Amen. Right.
Give them a hand. Thank you, Terry. Wow. So, if you're burdened and weary and tired, we know what the answer is. Press in and lean into Jesus. If that's you today and you are weary, perhaps the world has battered you around a bit, then find somebody that can actually pray with you before you go. All right? So lean into somebody and just share the burden with somebody else. All right? So, Father, we just thank you, God, for what you've done and what you've spoken, what we've sung today. Father, I pray that we will each take away something today. Lord, we'll be encouraged in this challenging season of life. Lord, that each person would find that burden that is easy to carry. So, Lord, I bless these people in Jesus' mighty name.